There's only one planet in the entire universe we know has intelligent life. Are there any others?
No, I don't believe that there are human-like intelligent creatures anywhere else in the galaxy, or even in the universe for that matter.
If this is the only place in the cosmos where biology has begun, if this is the only place where anything interesting is happening, then this is a miracle.
And we know what scientists think of miracles. So they've debated the existence of ET for centuries. And they're not the only ones. Now come on, admit it. We've all, at some stage, wondered if aliens exist. Sure, we don't all think they're visiting at the moment. But it turns out the answer to that question of whether there are other intelligent beings out in the universe hinges on the answer to another one of the big questions. Is there simple life on Mars? That's because if life got going here as well as Earth, life must be easy to form, and the galaxy should be teeming with it.
So this is a critical issue because the whole question, are we alone in the universe, hinges on whether life forms easily or is really hard. And we don't know the answer to that.
I'm going into the desert, just out of Broken Hill, to join a group of geologists who hope to shed light on the answer. They're studying meteorites because they believe these space rocks would make great homes for Martian microbes. I'm off on a meteorite hunt. First up, it's a lesson.
So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of what to look for when you're out looking for meteorites, just so we've got a nice fresh eye on what they look like.
This is a single, yeah? Meteorites are mostly magnetic, so the only tool necessary is a magnet on a stick and your eyes. So we're looking for black rocks in amongst the white.
Black rocks in amongst the whites.
And the meteorites aren't necessarily small.
Wow, look at that. Look at that.
So we might find one of those?
That'd be awesome if we found one of those. It's a rare find to find one like this. You can see the black, smooth crust on the outside.
So is that from when it's heated up, whizzing through the atmosphere?
Yeah, so they typically enter the atmosphere moving at something like 20 kilometres a second. So
that's fast.
You can imagine moving in that fast.
The heat generated by this speed melts the outer surface to create that black fusion crust. This one's still black because it's a fairly fresh arrival. It was in space only a few hundred years ago. Meteorites that came to us earlier look different.
Like that. So they're still smooth on the outside. You can see the edges have been smoothed off. This one's been sort of sitting on the surface in the desert for probably a few thousand years, maybe a little bit longer. The black fusion crust is gone now.
Yeah.
Now it's sort of brown
colour.
rusty
Yeah,
looking.
that looks a bit more difficult to find.
So we spread out a bit.
And so the hunt began. Now, why are these geologists studying Earth rocks to see if meteorites on Mars would make good habitats for microbes? Well, it's because meteorites come from space, so the ones that have landed on Mars are exactly the same as the ones that have fallen here. We'll come back to the hunt shortly, but first, belief in life on Mars has had a checkered history.
Mars has always been a favourite for life beyond Earth, and for the greater part of human history, people thought that maybe there were not human beings, but at least intelligent beings on Mars.
In the early 1900s, some even thought there were Martian engineers.
Percival Lowell, who founded the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff in Arizona, was convinced that there were Martians who built canals, and the canals of Mars became part of folklore.
Their planet was drying out, and the canals all came from the polar caps that were melting, creating water to flow into the equator where they had all their crops, and this was all made up from his imagination.
Unfortunately, when space exploration came along, these wild imaginings were dashed.
Hey, there we go. There she goes. Yeah, that's Data.
A few years before the famous Apollo missions, NASA launched Mariner 4 to Mars. It gave the first pictures ever of another planet. There were no canals, just a barren wasteland no better than the moon.
Well, there's nothing wrong with the moon, Graham. Nothing wrong with Mars. It can be whatever it wants to be. We don't have, our expectations are not what it's trying to fulfill here.
Nevertheless, views about life on Mars changed dramatically.
So in those days, looking for life beyond Earth, well, one might as well have said that one was looking for fairies. It was just considered completely pointless and even bizarre exercise.
But over the last decade, views have changed again. It's because of the discovery of a substance all life we know of depends on: water. We now know, billions of years ago, Mars was a wet place. It probably even had an ocean. Today the surface is dry, but that's not the case below.
In the last decade, we have lots of evidence that water is flowing in the subsurface. They have these dark structures. For example, if you take a pile of sand and put a hose on top, without water flowing on the top, it can flow underneath, and that will make the sand wet and dark. And that's what we think has happened and is still happening on Mars.
Flowing groundwater could be quenching microbial Martians' thirst. Back in the desert, turns out meteorites are quite hard to find. There's a lot of rocks in this desert, and very few of them are meteorites. And that's not one. In fact, they say it's not like searching for a needle in a haystack. It's like searching for a needle in a needle stack. But it's kind of addictive. You think that next one could be the one. There are two basic types of meteorite. The majority are the stony variety, but about 5% are metallic. Both types are usually magnetic. Although it turns out, not all magnetic rocks are meteorites. Hey, I got one.
Hey, cool. Nah, don't think that's a meteorite, sorry.
Why not?
Well,
It's magnetic.
yeah, it's pretty magnetic.
I think he's humouring me. It's black.
Yeah, I know, it looks like a meteorite.
So why is it not a meteorite?
Well, out here you get a fair bit of iron oxide on the surface, and when it sits out in the hot sun for a while, it turns into a mineral called maghemite. So magnetic maghemite.
I'd found what they call a meteor wrong.
Great, this is a hard game.
It is a hard game.
But I had comfort. The experts make mistakes too.
What do you reckon about that little vein there? That fracture.
Let's see that. No.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
This is a game of patience that can send a man crazy. But the lure of a find is strong. Meteorites are the oldest things on the planet. They formed before the Earth did. They were part of the initial cloud of dust and gas from which all the planets form.
Hey, cool. I'll head over and have a look.
I think I got one.
You got one, you think?
That's it.
Oh, wow, look at that. Does look like a meteorite, doesn't it?
It's got the nice, smooth, out of shape.
Wow, it's magnetic. Oh, jeez. Good one.
Yeah.
Good job.
Here's the crux. Meteorites may make better homes for life than many of the native rocks on Mars.
So most of the surface of Mars is covered in basalt. And basalt basically has two minerals. They're fairly inert, whereas meteorites have sulfides, they have iron metal, they have phosphates.
These are life-nourishing minerals.
Those particular minerals are what the microorganisms like to use to survive. That's that creamy, yellowy, white material that we see in there.
Meteorites are packed with microbe food.
So they're much more attractive chemically than the basaltic surface of Mars.
And there are more reasons why meteorites make attractive homes. Imagine setting foot on Mars. This is a 3D view of what it would actually look like. This really is quite amazing. You feel like you're there. The photos are real, the perspective is perfect. In fact, it looks a bit like you're in the Australian desert, except of course the reality is the temperature's below zero, the radiation is extremely harsh, and there's no water. In fact, the surface of Mars really is not a life-friendly place. But inside a meteorite lying on this surface, there's protection from the radiation and the temperature fluctuations, and a meteorite can hold some water.
The way I like to say it is the meteorite's kind of like a refuge habitat. It's not a primary habitat, it's a place where they can live in a hostile environment.
Now, NASA's rovers have spotted meteorites on Mars already.
So what they need to do is next time they find one is stop by, drill into it and see if they can actually find these types of minerals, because those types of minerals are very good at preserving biosignatures.
A biosignature is a chemical smoking gun that life is or has been in the meteorite.
So what we're trying to look for are characteristic chemical signatures that every time we see them anywhere on Earth or beyond Earth, we can say life made that signature.
Tomorrow, it's back to Monash to study meteorites. To see how microbes eke out an existence inside these space rocks, a small piece is broken off. It's put under a scanning electron microscope, and the images are extraordinary. Colonies of microbes feeding off the nutrients deep inside the rock. Meteorites do indeed make great microbe homes. But to look for that smoking gun biosignature, a piece of freshly fallen meteorite has a solution of microbes poured over it. It's then incubated for several weeks so the bugs can eat away at the rock and the chemical products examined. Now, the results aren't in yet, but if we can find a biosignature for life, future Mars rovers could look for it. With the next rover due for launch in 2020, we could know whether Martians exist within a decade.